Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Meet the Speaker. Today with me, I have somebody I've known a long time, Jennifer Waddell. Jennifer, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Good. Oh, it's good to have you here. So I'm really excited because you are one of the hosts of the Angular Plus show. You've been doing that for quite a while now, right?
Yeah, and like B-Love and I do this all the time where we're like, wait, has it been 2 years? Has it been 3 years? Like, when did we start this? So yeah, but we're getting close to wrapping up season 3, I believe. And so we're starting to schedule out for season 4. So we're
Wow.
like a real grown-up podcast now.
And for those that weren't sure if B Love is P. Diddy's new moniker, B Love is Brian Love, also a speaker this year at NGConf. So, well, let's get to know Jennifer just a little bit. First question I love to ask is, how did you get into programming?
Oh man, all right. Let me try and condense this version. But the TLDR is I was always into computers, but nobody ever was like, hey, this is a career path. So I was that kid on MySpace, Zanga, GeoCities building websites for my Halo clan because you weren't like a real Halo 2 clan unless you had a website. Yep. God, I'm like, one of my biggest regrets is that nobody archived GeoCities because so many of us just have like so many good treasures on there.
Right.
But anyway, went to school for graphic design and business management, thought I wanted to be a creative director, graduated when the economy tanked in 2009, nobody would hire me. So I was doing a lot of freelance, but, and I could get gigs if I could not only design the website, but build it too. And so that's kind of my journey into web development until I started working in a marketing agency full-time as a software engineer. This is right when we were starting to move from a web developer being somebody who wrote HTML, CSS, and they could like hack it jQuery, to starting to build single page applications using JavaScript. So like Backbone.js, Knockout, those kind of things. And so that was my journey into web development, very self-taught and sporadic.
So just curious here, which of those like early technologies do you feel like you had the most love for?
Well, so I was working and I was a self-taught, software dev, right? And so definitely struggled not feeling like I was good enough for that role. And Backbone.js had kind of become like the popular framework that people were starting to use in the company. And I was, learning JavaScript while single page applications and like these programming concepts at the same time, and felt like I was really struggling until one day, one of the guys who was known to the company for being like a badass and knew everything came and asked me a Backbone.js question.
Oh, wow.
So that was kind of a cool moment for me of, oh, wow, I can do this and can learn. And yeah. And then shortly after that, Kansas City got hit by kind of like a startup boom. And then I went to work at a startup where I started using AngularJS and then kind of stuck there ever since.
Well, that's super awesome. You became the like resident expert of Backbone. That's super cool. So
actually, so another team started using Backbone, and they had an engineer who like rewrote it in Backbone overnight, and then the other engineers are like, I don't know this at all, but they knew Jennifer, and so I would go over to, they were in a different location, we would do Backbone and Beers.
Backbone and Beers. Ooh, I like that.
So it was like a group of us and we would try a different beer every time. And one time, one of the guys, Aaron, brought sour beer, which my friend Kayla and I hated. We'd just have a sip and be like, bah! And then
Beers. Oh my goodness. Goodness. That's awesome. All right. So you've done a fair amount of technologies here. Are there any old technologies you don't use anymore that you miss?
Ooh, it's not technology specific, but it's a harp I have on the way I was introduced to technology to the way kids today are introduced to technology. Okay. And that was, I was born when the internet was ugly.
Right.
And that led to like a really organic way of making it prettier. Like we pimped out our Zanga pages and our MySpace pages, and it was a really easy way to get into programming that way because you were making something better. Right. Versus now we have these very polished and crisp UIs. And so we've created a generation that is consuming technology instead of creating technology. So it's not like I'm going to reminisce over like COBOL or something. I'm too young for that. But it's like I miss the days of the unpolished internet where you had better pathways into creativity and building things just for the sake of building things.
That's so funny. I've reflected on something very similar to this. When I learned to program, it was right at the beginning of the internet, and and so people did do UIs, but really a lot of people that learned to program learned, you basically, if you did any tutorials, you were learning with a command line interface. That was
Mhm.
the first programs you would write, was a CLI, which had no interface. And so you didn't have to spend any time at all learning how to make anything pretty. You could just basically get right, learning how to read input from the console and write it out took 20 minutes. And then the rest of it was learning to program. And I think that that's such a disservice to today, because people want to get into programming, but they get stuck in HTML and CSS and having to make everything pretty. And as you related, right? Like, it used to be at least ugly. You could just throw it up and it worked. You could learn HTML, the basics of HTML and CSS, and then put something together that you were okay with. But nowadays, if it's not pretty, if your borders aren't rounded, you got a problem, right? You
Yep.
have to learn to be a
Yep.
designer first before you can learn to be a programmer. And I think that's such a disservice to the industry.
Mhm.
Well, I'm not, the whole point here isn't for me to talk, but I just identified so much with that thought, that like very genius understanding of the difference of how things have changed and made it worse on us all. All right. Well, you are going to be speaking at NGConf. Let's talk about your talk. What are you be talking about?
Cool. I believe I'm slated to talk about scaling engineering teams, and how you can do that effectively when everybody is clamoring for more senior Angular engineers that may not necessarily exist out there in the hiring pool. So,
Right. Right.
yep.
Cool. What got you interested in speaking about that?
So I'm in consulting. I'm the director of Angular development at Bitovi, which is a JavaScript consulting company. And I see all the pain of my clients, and then I'm there with my teams to help fix their pain. And just hiring is a disaster. And I see the mistakes they're making. I see the costs associated with the mistakes they're making. And they just don't know how to build an environment that is going to get engineers at their level. And they're trying to hire, they're making bad hires that they're paying a lot of money for, when, in my opinion, they'd be better with a boot camp grad in half those cases, who's excited and eager to learn, versus somebody who is getting hired as a senior Angular engineer and is asking me the question, well, why should I use ng container? Or how do I merge code into my feature branch?
Right.
And paying like a senior engineer salary for somebody asking those questions. Yeah.
Huh. That's crazy.
Yep.
Interesting. Well, I'm excited for this talk now. I like hearing about it. That's kind of interesting. Let's talk about NGConf. What are you excited for besides getting to give a talk, this talk? What are you excited for with it, NGConf coming up?
Oh man, I don't know, because I've only ever done technically one NGConf in person, and that was before the pandemic. And then, all the speaking stuff went to hell. And when I applied to that first NGConf, I was like, there's no way in hell I'm going to get in. And so I was already booked to speak at another conference, like somewhat overlapping. So I had to leave NGConf early. Like I had to give my talk.
I remember that.
Yeah. And so I'm excited to like be there for the whole experience, because one of the things that's really valuable just as a speaker is you give talks and then you get that immediate feedback from the audience where they're like, hey, this would really help me solve my problem, or hey, I keep running into this problem, like what can I do about it? And so kind of hearing what people are struggling with, hearing what their needs are as Angular developers is really, really valuable for somebody like me who loves to create content to help people be better at their jobs.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, it's a good answer. I really like that. Is this gonna be your first in-person event since the pandemic?
No, I'm supposed to do one in 2 weeks, and I bailed on like a whole bunch earlier in this year just for a couple like health issues I was dealing with. But like I was excited to go back, but then there was a conference and there was a COVID outbreak at the speaker dinner, and they were really responsible and like notified, but I was just like, oh, I kind of want to crawl back into my cave now.
It's tough times.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm like trying to kick myself, because like Zoom conferencing sucks. We all hate it. But it's also, we're not out of the woods yet, folks. Like, yeah. And I don't know if we'll ever be. So
right.
Yep.
All right. Well, last question. Actually, we got 2 more questions. I got 2 more questions for you. I got a serious one.
Okay.
But you mentioned this before. How do you deal with imposter syndrome when you experience it?
It really helps me to kind of like take note of my surroundings, and then work on tracking my accomplishments. So if I have a small win for the day, anything, no matter what it is. I will like write it down and record it. And so you're going to go through times in your career that you feel like crap about yourself. You're not good enough. And then if you have kind of this like Rolodex that you can look back through of, oh no, I do know what I'm doing. Sometimes it might just take me a little bit of work to learn this new thing. If you have those wins that you can look back at, it can really help you get in a better place of understanding this is, a current situation. This is not a relative quality of myself. It's just what I'm dealing with right now until I get past it.
Right. Good advice. All right, well, let's turn to something a little bit more lighthearted here. We're going to move into our rapid fire questions. So
Okay.
I'm going to give you a whole bank of A or B choices, and you pick one.
Okay.
Don't have to explain why you pick it, but if you feel so inclined that you must explain it, that's okay too. You can pick neither or both, but that's kind of the wussy way out. It's the coward's way. All right, You ready?
Yep.
Okay, first one, very standard. Kirk or Picard?
Oh, this is hard because I grew up with Picard, but Chris Pine, Mama likes, so but probably Picard.
Okay, all right. He was voted some year right around that time. He was voted world's sexiest man alive.
Obviously, and he's actually I think he went to Brown or something. So he's not only hot, he's smart. So yeah.
All right. Next one, Ruby or Scala?
Neither.
Okay. Mickey or Goofy?
Oh, Goofy. From the Goofy movie. When I was younger, we would like replay the scene where he blows up his car over and over and over again and laugh.
Nice. Game of Thrones or Squid Game?
Neither.
Oh.
I tried to watch Game of Thrones after the hype, and I was like, why did you people love this so much? And I still don't watch Squid Game because I just like have not been in the right mindset.
Yeah. They definitely need a certain mindset. All right. Manga or mangoes?
Mangoes.
Sports or esports?
Well, considering I used to play Halo 2 competitively on the MLG circuit, I'm going to go with esports.
Wow, I did not know that about you. Well, I mean, you mentioned it. You just, but I did. Did you mention that you were playing competitive? Did I miss that aspect of it?
No, I didn't mention it then.
You play competitive. Wow. Wow.
Yeah, I was in a chick clan called PMS. Wow. Psychotic Manslayers. Yep.
That's awesome. That's awesome. My jealousy level of you just rose one more notch. All right. Twilight or Batman?
Batman.
Okay, you get the connection, right?
Yeah.
Robert Pattinson.
Whoa. Wait, are we saying his Batman movie? Because in that case, neither.
Oh, yeah. Okay. You didn't like it.
I could not make it through. I was like, this is so moody and dramatic. Like they outdid Tobey Maguire in Spider-Man 3. I just couldn't handle it.
I just wish somebody would turn on a second light bulb in the room. I spent the whole movie doing that. Okay. Road trip or hiking?
Road trip.
Doctor Strange or Stranger Things?
Stranger Things. Friday, new season. Yep. I'm so excited.
3 more days.
Oh, yep.
Veet or Webpack?
Webpack.
Okay, last one. This is one of my favorites. Billie Eilish or Billy Joel?
Oh,
it's a toughie, huh?
Oh man. All right. I'm gonna have to go with Billy Joel.
Billy Joel. Okay.
That's a good question though. That is a tough one.
It really is. It really is. Cool. Well, thanks so much for taking your time to be with us, Jennifer. Super excited to see you in person yet again at NGConf. Hopefully everybody who was watching will get to be there in person as well. Take care.